A new year is a chance to start over, to start clean, a chance to reach new heights, or, well, climb back to old ones you'd fallen off. Try and rebuild your reputation, as is the case with the OPCW. It started off with horrific footage, an alleged chemical attack. Took a year for the OPCW to publish its first draft. Open and shut case, it seemed. Found traces of chlorine. Found strong indications that the containers were dropped from the air. Done and done.
Today's OPCW final report on the 7th of April 2018 attack in Douma confirms chemical weapons used, demonstrating the vital importance of the OPCW's work. This confirmed chlorine attack was only the latest example of the Assad regime's chemical warfare attacks on its own population.
We would later learn that a significant part of that year seemingly went into picking a font that would make Assad look most guilty. The first hint came with a leaked report which calculated that the evidence didn't match. The canisters were very likely placed at the scene.
Observations at the scene of the two locations suggest that there is a higher probability that both cylinders were manually placed at those two locations rather than being delivered from aircraft.
The whistleblower behind this leak was kicked out of the OPCW building. He wasn't even an employee, they claimed. We would later learn that he was, and they lied. But that would happen later. First, another OPCW whistleblower would strike with very serious allegations.
Most of the Douma team felt the two reports on the incident, the interim report and the final report, were scientifically impoverished, procedurally irregular and possibly fraudulent.
Professor Richard Falk was there at a conference in Brussels where the second whistleblower spoke.
Well, essentially, he presented evidence and testimonials to the effect that the final report could not be justified in the form that it was submitted, and that it had been tampered with in such a way as to create a set of conclusions that corresponded with what the US and Britain, France, hoped would be the outcome of an investigation. But the evidence didn't support that outcome.
Here's how they manipulated the evidence. Despite their best efforts, they never found any nerve agent. What they did find are traces of chlorine, which sounds dangerous, right, to the uninitiated. Then again, you can find traces of chlorine in your drinking water, in your cleaning sprays, in your local swimming pool, everywhere. The difference between a mass chemical attack and someone cleaning their sink is concentration. How much chlorine was detected. Now guess what the OPCW decided to omit?
If the finding of these chemicals at the alleged site is to be used as an indicator that chlorine gas was present in the atmosphere, they should at least be shown to be present at levels significantly higher than what is present in the environment already. But when the analysis of these key levels came back from the laboratories, the results were kept with Sami Barek, a Tunisian who was the Douma fact-finding mission's leader. Against normal expectations, they were not passed on to the inspector who was drafting the OPCW's interim report on Douma.
Really strange, considering that the rebel video, which was used as justification to launch cruise missiles at Syria, clearly showed people suffering symptoms of nerve agent poisoning. It didn't even find chlorine in sufficient concentration to indicate a chemical attack. It boiled down to two explanations. Either Assad used a magical gas that is undetectable by modern instruments, or the videos were staged.
After almost 6 months of investigations, I can prove without a doubt that the Douma hospital scene was staged. No fatalities occurred in the hospital.
Before all the whistleblowers came out, you just couldn't say it. Any doubt about Assad's guilt would get you mobbed, ridiculed, smeared, threatened and fired. The free media, huh?
As I kept pushing to try and do this story because I feel like it's of extreme, public interest, the attacks turned on me. Editors were kind of nitpicking on certain things that I was doing in my articles, but it was purely on just to be able to attack me in an email. So after I kept pushing, I essentially was told a couple of lines about why they wouldn't run the OPCW story. At the moment, there are very few mainstream Western journalists that are reporting on this. So I would say this is a complete failure of the media. Our job as journalists are to hold governments to account, and if governments are going to war on false premises, then, and we have good evidence to suggest that now, and no one is reporting it, then we're not doing our job as journalists.
Eventually, we got to see the early draft report, and juxtaposed with the final one, the difference was striking. They cherry-picked everything that seemed even ambiguously incriminating.
I was struck by how much the redacted version of the report misrepresented the facts. Many of the facts and observations outlined in the full version are inextricably interconnected. And by selectively omitting certain ones, an unintended bias has been introduced into the report, undermining its credibility.
In case there was any doubt about which facts to pick, they had unidentified American agents come in and lecture the chemists on why Assad was guilty. They were to take their word for it.
The inspectors left Fairweather's office feeling that the invitation to the Americans to address them was unacceptable pressure and a violation of the OPCW's declared principles of independence and impartiality. 2 days later, the interim report was released.
A senior colleague told us, First floor management says that for the OPCW's credibility, we have to have a smoking gun.
You'd think that management would apologise for this, offer some sort of explanation, heck, even hand in a resignation or two.
While some of these diverse views continue to circulate in some public discussion forums, I would like to reiterate that I stand by the independent professional conclusion.
Basically, to hell with the OPCW's reputation. To hell with generations of chemists and scientists who kept the world free of chemical weapons. This is the 21st century's OPCW, which can synthesize chemical guilt literally out of thin air.